Hello and welcome to the first part of Talking Grannies and our very first granny square. So if this is your first granny square, welcome to the journey, and if you've made hundreds, then I'm happy to have you here as well to join in and share the joy of making a granny square. We're going to start with a classic granny square. So this is not our pattern, it's not Yarndale's pattern, this is the way that I do it. So I'm using a 4mm hook. I've got double knit yarn, I've got DK yarn, I'm using West Yorkshire Spinners Croft in 4 colours, so that each round of the granny square is a different colour. So this morning we're going to make, or this afternoon or this evening, depending on when you're joining, we're going to make a classic granny with 4 colours. So starting with green, then we're going to go to the pale blue, darker blue, and finishing with a nice oatmeal colour. I like granny squares with a neutral colour around the outside. It tends to bring out the colours that you've chosen. Okay, so we're going to start with the green and my 4mm hook. So we're going to start with a slip knot, and then we chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hook goes into the first chain to make it into a little circle. In your first round, the stitches are going to work into that little tiny circle, you see. So round 1, we're going to work into that circle and we're going to chain 5 to start. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 3 trebles. The pattern is on the website for you to download in a handy little booklet, and each of the patterns this week will be. So I've got my 3 trebles going into my circle. Then I chain 2, 3 trebles, and there's a description on each of the patterns of the different stitches used and how you're actually creating those stitches. So I'll talk through the different terms as I'm going on this first granny square. I'll just do the middle here, which is a repeat of trebles and your chains. So I finish with 2 trebles. And then this is the way I do it. I was once told it was wrong, but I don't think there's a right or a wrong way in crochet. I slip my last stitch to make my square into the space. Okay, I find it easier. Lots of people say you have to go into the chain. That's quite fiddly. I don't think it makes any difference. So go into the space to slip it, and then when you pull through to fasten off, you pull through and you yarn over and pull through another loop like that, ready to snip off, and then you'll pull your thread all the way through. Okay, and that is the beginning of your granny square. So I've got 4 groups of 3 trebles, and then if you pull the slip knot, turn it over and pull the slip knot at the beginning like that, it will pull that circle to tighten it in the middle like that. Okay, so round 2, we're going to join the next colour yarn, which in this case is going to be the pale blue, you see. So I'm going to join the pale blue, and I'll show you how to do that, and I'll talk through a bit more detail the actual stitches that we're using. Okay, so in any of my chain corners, I'm going to put my hook through and pull my yarn through like that. Okay, so I've got a bit of a loop. Okay. Do it as a slip stitch, so we're nice and tight there. So I've pulled it through and I've done a slip stitch. Okay, so to start my corner, I'm going to chain 5. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then into this same chain space, I'm going to do 3 trebles. And I'll show you more slowly how to do the treble if this is your first granny square. Okay, so we yarn over, that the hook comes in front of your yarn. Okay, goes round the back like that, so that you've got 2 loops really, or the yarn is over your hook twice, because you've got the chain here and the yarn over, and then we're going to go through, put the hook through that chain corner, and this time we're going to yarn over, but we're going to put the hook behind like that. It's going to twist over. I'm going to pull it back through, and I've got 3 loops on my hook. This is why it's called a treble. Okay, so we yarn over again and pull through 2 loops, yarn over again, pull through the last 2, and that is your treble. All the time keeping your tension with your index finger. So let's do it again. So we go yarn over, through the chain corner, yarn over and back through. So I've got my 3 loops on my hook, yarn over, through 2, yarn over, through 2, and again. Okay, and that's the first corner. So between my corners and along the sides of my granny square, I do 1 chain between my treble 3 clusters. So that's my 1 chain. So we're going into this corner here. So it's going to be a repeat of 3 trebles, 2 chains, 3 trebles, all into this corner space. And you'll see that it starts to look a little bit like that granny square that you will have seen or you have done many, many times. My next corner, do my 3 trebles, 2 chains in between, 3 more trebles, last full corner, because we started in a corner. These squares honestly are so addictive. If this is your first granny square, trust me, it will be the first of many, many, many. Okay, so we're going back to the first corner, which we started. Just move that out of the way. And in this space here, we just need to do 2 trebles, because the chain 5 at the start counts as your first treble and the 2 chains in the corner. So to join, we do a slip stitch into the space, pull the yarn through, all the way through, and then through again. I'll snip it off and pull it all the way through. So that's 2 rounds of your granny square done. Okay, we're going to join in our next colour. And you've done the hardest bit, because as always, the starting off is the hardest bit. So any corner, chain 5, and you'll start to see from the pattern that actually it is the same every single round on a classic granny. So you start with your 5 chains, you're in a corner, and in each of the chain spaces from before, between your clusters of 3 trebles, you do 3 trebles with 1 chain in between, apart from the corners where you have 2 chains in between. So I've gone all the way across. So you have 3 groups of trebles on this round. 3rd round, 3 groups of trebles. 4th round, you'll have 4 groups. So we go around, keep going round, just doing your groups of 3 trebles, chain, gosh, can you hear the wind? The wind is whistling and blowing. I don't think I've known a windier winter. Definitely needed my granny square blankets to keep me warm of an evening this winter. Still do. Right, so we're going all the way around. And when you get the hang of these, they really do grow quickly, and it's really satisfying because you've got a tiny little granny square and you can do them one at a time. They're portable because they're not very big. Sometimes the ends just get in the way, you just have to pull them out of the way. It doesn't matter. and I'll show you how to sew them in at the end. Some people like to crochet over the ends of the colour before, from the round before. I like to actually spend a little bit of time sewing them in. I find if you just crochet over them, certainly, well, my crochet, I'm not a very tight crocheter, but if you just crochet over, you tend to get little ends poking out, and I don't like that. I think it looks messy and they really annoy me, and then I have to go and try and poke them back in. So I find that if you actually sew them in, they're much more secure, and you get less of those little furry ends poking out to say hello that you don't want to say hello to. Some people don't mind, but fasten off. There we go. We've got 3 rounds of the granny square. See, it really does grow quite quickly. So on to the last round. Join in any corner. So we start with our chain 5 as always. There we go, 1, next group of 3, and you'll see that we've got 4 across the edge of the side. To the corner. So granny square is a perfect way for using up any leftover bits of double knit wool that you have from other projects, because you can use just small amounts of each colour. And you don't have to use double knit. So I'm using a 4mm hook. If you were using leftover sock wool, you might use 2 strands together and then use a 4mm hook. Or you might use 1 strand and use a 3mm hook. Be guided by what it says on the ball band as to what the gauge of the wool is and the thickness and the yardage. And it depends very much if you want a really dense blanket. So in the introduction to Talking Grannies, I showed you my granny's blanket that she'd made. And that was 2 strands of 2-ply held together and crocheted really tightly. So it's a really dense, really thick, really, really heavy and warm blanket. So it uses a heck of a lot of wool. Okay, so I'm on my 3rd round. How are we doing? How's it looking? We're getting there. Really lovely squishy little square. Right. Right, the last full corner, and then we're across the side. And you're probably thinking, oh gosh, she's done it really quickly. Well, I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these, so it's like anything, you have to practice. And the more you practice, the better you get. I spent a lovely evening a couple of weeks ago with a niece of mine who is only 11, and she said, will you teach me to crochet? And she was determined. And last night I had a lovely picture of her progress, and she's really got the hang of it. She took it away and has made quite a unique granny square, shall we say, but she's got all the stitches there and it looks amazing. So I really do believe that anybody can have a go at this. But the old saying, if at first you don't succeed, keep trying. Okay, so there we have it. 1 classic granny square. Now I'll show you how to sew in the end. So you need a darning needle, turn it over to the wrong side, and you've got all your ends here floating around. Okay, so we thread the darning needle, and rather than go sort of between the actual stitches, I like to go through the fibre, so you're splitting the wool a little bit so that your ends will completely disappear inside. So give it a good tug. So you're just going to go backwards and forwards in the same colour a few times, but do it, if you can see, really just shallow, so you're not going all the way through the stitches, otherwise you'll get a line on the other side where you've sewn it in and it'll be completely hidden. So I've done that, I've done that twice. I've lost count now because I'm talking. I don't think it really matters. Backwards and forwards like that. So I've done that quite a few times, haven't I? And snip it off close. Some people hate sewing in ends. I have to say it's not my favourite. But it's like anything, if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing properly, I say. And really, for all the time that you've spent and invested, I think it's worth that little finishing off. That really does make a difference to how well your granny squares last. Backwards and forwards. And snip it off. Until they're all done. So there you have it, one perfect classic granny square, and if that's your first granny square, well done. Tomorrow I'm back with a brand new pattern and a new square to have a go at. Thank you for joining. Bye.